Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And I'm Jade Walle.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. Yes, Jade, you can say that. You are officially one of us now and have been for quite a while.
Laminated card and everything.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you get your secret decoder ring in the mail and all that kind of stuff. So first order of business, hello and Merry Christmas to everyone. This is our last FAIRtax Power Radio before the actual Christmas Day. And, of course, we'll be looking at the Tax Reform Hall of Shame next week. Yes. That's going to be fun. But I say Merry Christmas to both of you gentlemen.
Merry Christmas. And to you and yours, as Absolutely. We say from us and ours.
All right. Well, we have a little bit of Christmas cheer here from FAIRtax Power Radio. We're going to do something a little bit different today that I think you will find amusing. We'll have some fun with it. It's just have to imagine a different setting than what we've normally got. Okay, just imagine in your head here now that there never was an income tax. There never was a 16th Amendment. From the very beginning, we had the fair tax. The fair tax where you pay your taxes when you buy things, and that's it. That's the law of the land. We've had it for decades upon decades. And actually, the subject of taxation really doesn't come up in Washington very much. The fair tax is so simple, so efficient, so beneficial to everybody that nobody just even dreams about messing with it, even though there are the occasional lobbyists that try to come in and say, well, prescription drugs or groceries or this, that, and the other should have an exemption. That shouldn't happen. We need to exempt these things. That really never goes very far because everybody realizes that if you start making exemptions, you've got to start raising the rate to make the same amount of money. And given that you've got the prebate, everybody's untaxed up to the poverty level, then that's everybody's pretty happy with a fair tax. And of course, the prebate also means that people, not politicians, get to decide what their basic necessities are. It's a beautiful thing. So just have that in the back of your head here. Okay, we've set the stage for what our country looks like with the fair tax as our nation's system of funding the government. But wait a minute. There's a crafty new politician on the scene of this country, and he's got some contrived, made-up scenario he's going to try to sell us. Let's just, for the fun of it, call this guy, how about Jade Walle? That's his name.
That's a very appropriate name, I guess.
He's got a brand new idea for collecting the nation's treasury receipts, okay? So how about that? He's just right here, but he's right here with us.
Got Bob, a great idea.
In name and face. And we're privileged to have with us today Mr. Jade Walle, a politician from the great state of Colorado, who is proposing that we adopt a completely new system of taxation. Jade, tell us a little bit about your proposed plan.
Sure, Bob, I'd be happy to. And I really believe this new plan, the income tax, is going to win the hearts and minds of our citizens. The plan is simple, really. When we earn money at our respective places of employment, we'll pay a tax on this income we earn.
Wait a second. Are you telling me that the sweat of my brow, the hard work I perform, the pay I get for that, is part of it's going to be confiscated by the government? Are you kidding me?
Let's not describe it that way, Bob. This is a program that will collect a percentage, and I'm sure it will only be a very small percentage of income that only the wealthiest only the wealthiest people, enjoy this type of income. Those that are more fortunate, and the more fortunate among us will have to pay this income tax to fund our government's operations. That's it.
Okay, so normal middle-class people won't have to pay this income tax then?
Well, let's put it like this. The most wealthy, let's say folks making over $539,900, will have to pay the highest rate, and it'll be 37%. If you make over $215,950 a year, then you'd pay 35%.
Okay, wait a minute. So it looks like only folks making quite a bit are going to be taxed here. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't quite finished, Bob. If you make over $170,050, your rate will be 32%. If you make over $89,075, $89,075, your rate will be 24%. Then If you make over $41,775, you'll pay a 22% rate, and over $10,275, a 12% rate. Lastly, 0 to 10,275, you'll pay a 10% rate. So it's really just very simple.
Good gracious. I thought this was only going to be a tax on the most wealthy among us, a tax to soak the rich.
Well, it does, in a graduated fashion, cause the most wealthy among us to pay their fair share.
All right. Define what fair share is.
Well, Bob, we like to keep this definition fluid. It can change. It can change quite a bit depending on where we are as a nation and how much money the Treasury needs to raise for the spending initiative of the season. Let's call this fair share term non-binary for now.
Okay. Well, I guess that's why you're a politician. You're skilled at not answering the question at hand. Another question, though, what about the income tax only affecting the rich? That rate table, which is more like a chest of drawers that you walk through, has taxes all the way down to the first dollar earned.
Well, the income taxes. Oh, trust me. The income tax system will have a series of what we call deductions, as well as credits, exclusions, exemptions, and loss carry forwards. So $12,950 will be the standard deduction as a single person, and you can exclude that much income from taxation. We'll also have a litany of other programs that allow for credits, even credits greater than the amount of tax you paid, and we'll call those refundable credits. This will help the poor and allow us as the government to really hone in and focus our policy and taxation on encouraging the type of behavior we want to see.
Sounds like you're not coming up with a tax system. You're coming up with a behavioral modification and incentivization mechanism. Is that true? Tell me the truth.
Yes. Many of us have felt for a long time that the fair tax is so simple and straightforward that we don't have enough power as politicians to really force the behaviors and activities that we just know would be extremely beneficial to our fellow countrymen and women.
But the fair tax actually does encourage behavior quite elegantly and subtly without detailed and complex tax rules. By the way, how many people are going to be paying? How are they going to do it? How are they paying the income tax?
Oh, that's easy. There will be what is called an income tax return that people will have to fill out every year, capturing any and all income and following the appropriate tax legislation rules upon completion. Do make sure, Bob, that you fill out the forms correctly. Otherwise, the newly constituted tax courts could convict you, and the government might seize your bank accounts and freeze your assets if they suspect that you haven't filled out any of these forms accurately or correctly.
What? Are you kidding me? You're going to empower the government to seize my assets without due process? You got to be out of your mind.
Well, yes, because it isn't really your personal due process at stake here, Bob. It's the dollars in your bank account. So we'll have legal grounds to seize those funds.
Wait a minute. That's insane.
But don't worry, after a year or two of tax court adjudication, if we've made a mistake, you'll get your money back then. So no problem whatsoever. But
wait a minute, you're going to hold my money for 2 years and that's no problem? What's wrong with you?
Well, you know, we got to make sure you did the tax returns correctly. But let's not get caught up in the minutia. Let's go back to encouraging behavior, though. Your point is correct in how the fair tax encourages behavior such as saving, legal immigration, post-secondary education or trade school, environmental stewardship, business development, and domestic factory expansion. The fair tax does eloquently kind of encourage all of these, what we'd probably all agree are wonderful things. However, I'd like to have a little more flexibility in how the government incents people to behave. For instance, if we offer a tax credit for buying a new EV or installing solar panels on your home, we can really help the environment.
Yeah, but the fair tax has been the single largest green legislation our nation has ever had. It works marvelously, encouraging people to legally avoid the fair tax by purchasing gently used goods like electronics, tools, clothing, and of course, two of the most people's largest lifetime expenditures, homes and automobiles. The fair tax, only taxing new rather than used goods and services, has made us the greenest nation on earth. So
I don't dispute what you're saying, Bob. All I'm saying is think of how much more we can encourage green behavior with our new income tax. Yes, there will be some forms to fill out. Yes, there will be paperwork with the qualifying manufacturer. And yes, there will be quite a bit of regulation and tax code written to support our initiatives. But surely this will be good. It'll be a great thing for all of us.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, let me make sure I understand this right. With this new income tax of yours, workers will bring home their paycheck, but then they'll have to pay the government, according to these convoluted tax tables that you spoke of. That sounds incredibly complex.
Well, you're not exactly going to be able to take home your whole paycheck. To ensure we collect the Treasury's receipts throughout the year, so well, just hear me out, Bob. We need to get the Treasury receipts throughout like the FAIRtax currently does from the states and vendors each month. So the income tax will withhold an estimate of the amount of federal income taxes you owe, and they'll withhold it from your paycheck each cycle. It'll be quick and easy, and after a while, workers won't even miss the money that is being withheld from their paycheck. And we hope that workers will begin to just describe their remuneration and earnings as take-home pay.
Wow. So let me see if I got this right. The federal government will have an income tax, and you're basically going to take it out of our checks.
Only Boss Hogg would like that idea.
Huh?
Well, that's correct, but I forgot to mention this. Apologies. To keep our income tax rates from being too high, like 40 and 50 or 60% or more, we're going to set aside a new type of tax as you earn your paycheck, and this will specifically fund Medicare and Social Security. We'll call this the payroll tax, and we project it will bring in by itself nearly 40% of our nation's Treasury receipts.
Wait a minute. So you're going to withhold this income tax from my paycheck. And then on top of that, you're going to put this payroll tax as well?
That's right. That's right.
Nuts.
We've got to fund Social Security and Medicare.
Get a checkup from the neck up.
As employees, you'll pay 7.65% of your earnings. But don't worry. Our calculations actually show that it should be more like 15.3% to attempt to fund our social safety net programs. But don't worry, we're going to have each employer pay this other half of the payroll tax. So you only have to pay half. Sounds great, huh?
Yeah. So you're going to penalize employers for hiring employees? Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah. The paychecks we earn now not only will have the federal income tax withheld, but also this payroll tax.
Yeah, but again, workers will just look at the net amount on their paycheck and be happy with whatever their take-home pay is.
Yeah, take-home.
All right. Well, listen, what happens to the super, uber wealthy folks who don't work for an employer? They don't work for a paycheck. They get their income off of dividends and investment income and capital gains and stuff like that. They won't have any payroll. Am I understanding this right? You're only going to put this payroll tax on paychecks. How do people who make a very good living but not getting a paycheck, how's this going to work for them?
Well, you're right, Bob. The super wealthy won't have any employee earnings, but don't worry. We're going to ensure that everyone's, including these super rich folks, pay income taxes on interest, dividends, and capital gains. And I know you're not used to that with the FAIRtax, but really with our income tax, it's an all-inclusive income concept. So, and you get that bank statement and you earn some interest, you're going to be paying taxes on that. But we might even think about changing the tax law in the future to tax unrealized investment appreciation, but we can worry about that later. And we'll tax capital gains at 15% or 20% with this new system.
And the word diabolical comes to mind when you're talking like this. So let me get this straight. Hardworking folks who might have higher incomes will pay income tax rates up to 37%. But the super uber wealthy, not related to the transportation thing, the super uber wealthy who literally live for months on their yachts in the Mediterranean pay a much lower capital gains tax. Absolutely no payroll tax.
Well, Bob, we've got quite a few multimillionaires in Congress, as you know, not really earning an income from an employer, and they
Yeah, they're
insisted.
working for the lobbyists. But go ahead.
Well, they insisted on this type of tax treatment on investment earnings. So I think it is a compromise we can all live with, don't you?
No, I don't. This new income tax thing is almost completely lets those folks escape taxation. You're not taxing existing wealth, which the most wealthy among us have plenty of. And while you're letting the most wealthy among us with plenty of us get away with murder, the majority of people, hardworking people who are working for a paycheck, they're going to pay much, much more of the taxation burden under your new scheme. Now, I've run some quick math here. I made A's in math all the way through college. Now, when you factor in the payroll tax, this new income tax system you're talking about, even with its graduated, brackets and stuff like that, much more regressive than the current fair tax there, bud.
Well, now technically you're correct, Bob, but let's look at it this
way.
Right.
Thank you for admitting that.
Technically, but let's look at it this way. We'll highlight to everyone that the payroll tax is just a down payment on their benefits they'll receive upon retirement. Ooh. And I'm sure those benefits will be there. And when we look at it this way, we can focus on only the graduated income tax rates, like in the table I went through earlier, and that will have the appearance of being much more progressive since the rates go higher and higher the more you earn.
Through the roof, Alice, to the moon. Well, so this new income tax system is based on subterfuge and ends up placing more of a burden on the working poor relative to the fair tax, which we have now, which completely untaxes the poor up to the poverty level. Okay, Mr. Smart Guy, to summarize, you're going to replace the fair tax with this new income and payroll tax system, and you think this is going to be better for our country?
Well, point of clarification here, Bob. We actually really like how the fair tax taxes at the retail register when people buy new goods and services. We'd hate to do away with such an efficient and streamlined taxation portal. Therefore, I'd like to announce today that in addition to our income and payroll tax system, we'll keep the fair tax on retail consumption, but don't worry, we're going to lower the rate to something around 5% across the board. This will allow us to tackle some very important spending priorities we have in Washington that we just haven't been able to find the funds for until now.
Wait a minute. You're going to impose this new income tax on top of the fair tax? We'll have both an income tax and a consumption tax at the same time? And
that's a value-added tax.
And I'll tell you what, I don't believe a word you're saying. I don't think you're going to use a dime of this new money to pay down our $30 trillion national debt. You politician guys are going to spend every bit of it and then some.
Well, Europe does this, so I don't see what the big hang-up is.
I don't care what Europe does. This is America. You don't represent Europe.
You're going to dry up with that idea.
Of course, Bob, we'll try and see about debt and deficit reduction. Of course, we'll try.
Join me out back in a minute.
That is very important to all of us here in Washington, as you know. However, there are many spending programs that we need to see about first in Washington, including funding foreign wars, gain-of-function virus research in China virology labs, funding grants for the study of Mongolian dung beetle mating habits. Important stuff.
That's a good one.
Are you kidding me? All right, listen, if I've understood this right, this new income tax system that you're going to come up with relies on people divulging to the government on a bunch of complicated forms the intimate details of their personal finances, and then they can claim credits and deductions and all that kind of stuff. What about people that don't tell the truth on those tax returns? This sounds like something that would be just really easy to evade and not do right.
Well, there might be some truth to what you're saying, Bob, perhaps. Now, I know with the fair tax, I know evasion is almost it's almost zilch under the fair tax. There might be a few percentage points because of the lawn guy offering to mow your lawn for free, but pretty much evasion is unheard of because everyone has to spend. I acknowledge that. Now, with the income tax, though, we hope the better person and the better human within everyone's heart would see to it that they honestly and fairly collect and report their taxes. And we estimate there'll only be about 75 to 77,000 pages of tax codes that we'll have to comply with. So I don't really see the problem.
You need a publication 17. That's what you do. Call it publication 17. 200.
Do you honestly think that? Do you honestly think that criminals and people who make money under the table are going to accurately report their income when there's no way to trace it? You're crazy.
That might be true, and we'll have to see about that. And we only estimate that it would be about $1 trillion of illegal evasion every year under the income and payroll tax system.
Well, compare that to what's how much evasion do we have on the fair tax?
It's about 50 billion a year versus 1 trillion. I know that's a 95% difference, but I'd say that all the cumulative benefits I've gone over today outweigh this negative.
What are you smoking over there, by the way? I just want to know.
I'd say you're nuts.
We are in Colorado here, Bob. So
that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, Your Honor.
All right. Wait a second. Are you going to tax corporations as well as individuals with this new income tax?
I'm glad you brought that up. Corporations, we think we'll probably tax them at about a 21% rate because those corporations need to pay their fair share. They're some of the wealthiest corporations out there. And you know what? We've got a new aspect to our tax law that we propose here. And we're going to tax any big company making over $1 billion of profit, like a minimum corporate tax rate, because, sometimes those deductions and loopholes can minimize the amount of corporate taxation they have to pay. So the neat thing about that, you don't have to worry about, like with Europe, with the sales VAT taxes, they have to be refunded before they sell abroad. With our U.S. corporations, we don't even have to refund any of that because the taxes will be built into the price that everyone pays, and that'll just be built into the cost of our U.S. manufacturers. It's simple.
Isn't that something? That's simple. Yeah, right.
Hold it. Let me ask you something. What happens to the price of airline tickets when the price of jet fuel goes up?
We all know that drives the ticket prices higher.
Well, what do you think is going to happen to the prices of everything that we buy when you start taxing the people that produce them?
Well, it's a fair point, but I'd like to really look at it in a different way, that those corporations need to pay their fair share.
What is their fair share? Define that.
Well, again, we like to keep that fluid, Bob, because you never know when we might need to make amendments to those rates for various reasons.
Yeah, and the way you write the laws up for other purposes, so you can.
And for other purposes.
Yeah, just because you might happen to wake up at 3 o'clock one morning and go, "Oh, we forgot about the dung beetle." Great goodness.
Have you given any thought whatsoever to the possibility that if you start taxing all these corporations, they're just going to simply pull up and move overseas?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that wouldn't happen, but in some lower tax,
what's going to stop them?
You know what? We'll probably have some probably well-intentioned politicians stand up and say that they're going to figure out a way to encourage domestic manufacturers to stay put. Now,
you encourage domestic manufacturers to stay put by not taxing them to death.
I realize the tax rate might be lower in Ireland, once we implement this corporate tax rate. And I realize we've been the tax haven of the world with our fair tax system. I acknowledge that, but having the corporations pay their fair share is the right thing to do.
So your last name, your middle name wouldn't be Hoover, would it? Sucking all of the job opportunities out and innovation out of our country here with this cockamamie scheme you got going on.
Well, I can neither confirm nor deny that allegation.
It sounds to me like you've got this sinister plan to tax all these corporations, which means that the hidden costs of that's going to raise prices for everybody who buys the products and services that these businesses create. So when we buy something, we're paying taxes we're not seeing, hidden taxes in the price of everything we buy. Am I on track here?
Yeah, we've done some detailed studies, and that's what we call embedded taxes. And again, we don't like to really publicize this, but the actual embedded taxes we estimate, depending on the industry, will be around 15 to 23%, about 22% of the cost of everything we purchase will be embedded taxes that you can't see in there. And it's kind of good Well, that's
Why
good,
do you
Bob,
think?
because
Why do you
if
think
you
that's a
can't-
good idea?
Well, if you can't see them, you don't realize you're paying them. Now, isn't that a nice tax treasury receipt mechanism? We don't even realize all those embedded taxes are in the cost of everything we buy.
It sucks weed.
I just don't get the.
Scarborough, do you believe what you're hearing?
You're going backwards in time. You're setting us up for failure. You're putting us behind the 8 ball. We're going to be the last pin in the bowling contest. We're going to be,
But think how much, Bob, think how much the hardworking American won't have to pay that horrible 23% inclusive fair tax rate at the register. They won't have to pay that anymore. They're going to have so much more.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute. A few minutes ago, you said you're going to put this new income tax on top of the fair tax. Which is the truth?
Well, we'd lower the fair tax rate to be like 5% or something.
Okay. All right, Kemo-sabe, let me throw this at you. If the government is going to have all of this personal, private, confidential financial data on everybody, how are you going to keep it secure? How are you going to keep hackers from getting a hold of it? How are you going to keep people from inside whatever the government agency you come up with to do this? How are you going to keep everybody's confidential information secure? I don't think you can do it.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say anybody running for president will probably demand that they, publicly disclose their tax returns, just to make sure nothing nefarious is going on. But
that's not what I asked you.
I understand. Now, I want to ensure you that we've got the finest minds, a group of the finest minds, and they are going to have cyber experts and make sure that I think we're going to call our internal system the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, and they're going to ensure top state-of-the-art computer hardware and technology. It'll never be dilapidated. And, you can file paper returns or online filing, and it'll be all secure. And
I think I saw this on a science fiction movie at 3:00 a couple of mornings ago on the Sci-Fi Channel.
And I'm sure no politician would ever try to use tax return information to target their political opponents. This is America. Who would do that?
Well, we're all.
You want a list?
Especially you all in Congress.
Sounds like what you're coming up with is the Infernal Revenue Service. That's going to trample all over the Bill of Rights. You're going to trample all over the Bill of Rights. You're going to take people's property without due process. You're going to assume they're guilty rather than assume they're innocent. This is where'd you come up with this crazy idea?
Well, I assure you, some of us in Washington have worked diligently on this, the finest minds, and we've come up with a comprehensive plan that will really work for most Americans.
Yeah, it sounds like only a CPA can understand, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
well, this is going to be wonderful. We're going to have tax consultants make a lot more money at CPA firms, which is good for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Good for the CPA firms. How is it good for me?
Well, Bob, you don't have to pay that horrible fair tax rate at the register anymore. And you know what? If you're in retirement years, your tax return probably won't be that big.
Are you going to take away my monthly prebate too?
Well, yes, that does fall away with the income tax, because all we'll do is have that fair tax that we'll keep a little bit just for some spending priorities, but no more prebate.
Yeah, I got to get on the call here. Hold on just a second. Yeah, there's this really nutty guy over here talking about the income tax. Have you heard anything about it? Oh, you have? Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell you exactly where he is. He's right in between me and the other Bob, and we're getting ready to hornswoggle him and tie him up and get him the heck on out of here. Yeah, okay. We'll hold him till you get here. Thanks.
Who's that?
That's that people down there at the psych ward. They've been looking.
Oh, okay. Well, I think some of them may have hatched this income tax idea.
I'm telling you.
Hey, I got one more question for you. If 7 years after this is implemented, we decide we don't like it, can we get rid of it?
No, I realize the fair tax had that sunset clause, but we don't have anything like that with your income tax. And Bob, I think you're being a little bit aggressive here. Let's not knock it till we try it. Let's not knock it till we try it.
Oh, so we got to pass the bill to see what's in it. Is that it?
You do, and it's going to usher in a new era into our country.
Error. ERROR. A new error. Not era. Error.
A new era. Goodness gracious.
Big red flashing error.
Right. I just thought of something else here. What about these deductions and exemptions and exclusions and stuff you were talking about earlier? Is that going to be stable, or are they going to be changing every year?
Yeah. Well, depending on spending priorities, and depending on which new initiatives we want to encourage, we will probably be changing those every 2-year cycle. So you will have to pay attention to those and make sure you probably want to hire what we'll call a tax advisor to help you with all of this, because it will be complex and it will be subject to change year to year. But I would say it's actually a new way we can spend at the federal government, because if we give you large deductions for various things, like if you own a home and you have home interest expense with your mortgage company, we might allow you to deduct that and shield some income from taxation. So technically we're spending in a new way that goes, it doesn't have to go through the spending review processes of Congress. And we'll call that the spending side of the ledger. In the tax side of the ledger, and we've got a whole new mechanism to spend on different priorities vis-a-vis tax credits, refunds, deductions, loopholes, exclusions, and exemptions.
So you're telling me
how many pages have you gotten through already on this thing anyway?
About at 75,000.
If you give Scarborough one of these new exemptions, doesn't that mean I have to make up the difference?
Well, we do have a minimum Treasury receipt threshold that we need to ensure that we accomplish and meet every year. So to the extent we do give deductions and exemptions one place, we will have to make adjustments in other places to ensure those receipts are maintained at an appropriate level.
Sounds like a typical politician to me. I don't know. I'm thinking I'm going to take this 75,000 pages and shred it.
Well, we just need to make sure those more wealthy from an income perspective pay their fair share. And I think we can all agree on that.
Well, I think we need to agree that Jade Walle needs to be primaried in the next election and sent back to Timbuktu where he came from.
Yeah. Isn't he sitting in the ejector seat there? Don't you have the button there? You can press that thing and launch him out of here.
There's a thought. Well, I tell you what, no, we're going to be gentlemen about it. But I will tell you to your face, your plan is crazy. It's nowhere near as good as the FAIRtax, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I'll admit my program is slightly more complex, a little less efficient than the FAIRtax, but I think we should give it a try.
I think you should get a lump of coal in your Christmas stocking. You're getting a lump of coal in your Christmas stocking there, bud.
That's right. That's
all right, there we go. All right, that was fun.
That was fun.
Now back to reality. We have
now back to reality of getting rid of the income tax that we've got and replacing it with the FAIRtax rather than doing it the other way around.
In case you're joining us, we just illustrated what the FAIRtax can do in reverse by showing you exactly what's happening with the income tax today.
This is a fun way to go about it, because if we really had the fair, we would never go to this system. You know what I mean? It's a really fun way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, any real politician that came out and tried to sell us the crap that you were selling us there ain't gonna get reelected.
It's getting deep over here on this side of the dais. Let me tell you. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, it was what a mess. What a mess that the income tax is. And you think about it, people, as Bob P. and I talk a lot, folks, people that are our age, we never had a day in our lives where we weren't exposed to the income tax. Yep. And that's where I think that's where a lot of the population is. They say, oh, how are we going to pay for? Because even if you explain the FAIRtax to people, tax on consumption, IRS goes away. Well, how are you going to fund this? And how is Medicare going to be funded? And how is this going to be? So you still have that. There's a hurdle to get over. But as we always say, once you understand it, you'll demand it. Absolutely. Hammering on. And this is a perfect, hey, knocked it right out of the park with that one, that scenario there.
Okay, I got to give you kudos for being a good sport here and taking all the slings and arrows
boy.
that you.
Yeah, I had to shovel it on. Sorry about
That was fun. That was fun.
But it does. It's kind of like people that have, if we were had already experienced the fair tax in our lives.
Yeah,
how it works, and then have somebody come peddling the beep stuff that we have now, the income tax. I think you meet, and that's actually a good thing, because once you tear open the fair tax and actually have it implemented, folks are going to be light years to get rid of the fair tax and go to the income tax. So they'll never go back. It will never. Yep. There will be no reversal of it once it gets opened up.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what,
we say that about when you pay if the employee was responsible for paying their taxes out of each check, that there would be immediately within 60 or 90 days, especially around the holidays, people would be in Washington scrambling for a way to get things changed to something else, because everybody be raising cane.
Absolutely.
We've had a lot of fun here this week on FAIRtax Power Radio. We're going to have more fun next week on FAIRtax Power Radio when we go through the 2022 Tax Reform Hall of Shame, all of the actual proposals that have been introduced into Congress during the past 12 months to mess with the tax code. So be sure to catch that on FAIRtax Power Radio here. Tell your friends and family about it. And that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
I'm Jade Walle.
Merry Christmas, everybody. And remember, the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
Well, we've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the fair tax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month, on everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?
Well, we believe